on in, sit down. Let's get going. I'm gonna give y'all like 30 seconds. 10, 9. 3, 2, 1. Happy meeting. Good morning, y'all. I will now call this meeting to order. A very special welcome to those of you who are watching from home. You know, I never got a chance to sit down and think about or really write what I was going to say this morning. Just been, you know, I like to say up to my behind, but that's not the word I usually use, in alligators. I have really enjoyed this last year, and I want to thank you all for your faith in me, in letting me have this role. And I hope that I have served you well and that you feel, you know, that this has gone well. And thank you all also for accepting me exactly as I am. Because I'm kind of strange. I'm a horseshoer. What do you want? Amen, Dale. All right. Thank you. So we will have our chalice lighting. And that's another thing that I forgot to put anything in there. So I'm going to have to vamp here for a second. And we don't have a candle. We don't. All right. Here, you want a lighter? So welcome into this space. We are going to discuss the future of our church. And our agenda today, it covers several things. And I would like you all to look around for a moment and really think about this community that we are in. And this is our beloved community. I'm so glad to see you all here. And may we all faithfully consider all of the items before us today before we make our vote. All right. Cool. Here we are. So we're going to skip over opening words because I already said what I was going to say. We're going to go for the call for approval of minutes. I will now call for the approval of minutes of the annual congregational meeting that was held on June 9th, 2024, which were posted on the church's website under the members section. Can I have a motion, please? Motion from Kate. I need a second, please. From Patrick, thank you. All in favor? Aye. Any abstentions? Any nays? All right, thank you. And now I will call for the approval of the minutes of the special membership meeting that was held on January 26, 2025, which were posted on the church's website under the member section. Do I hear a motion? Marge, thank you. Do I get a second? I forgot your name. What's that?
Sarah Ormond.
Oh, Sarah Ormond, okay. Oh, okay. I saw another hand behind you. I was really confused. All in favor? Any approval? Any nays? Any abstentions? All right, there we go. Okay, so next slide, please. I probably should put my glasses on. It's a lot easier to read with them on. At this time, I'd like to thank the board trustees who are leaving the board after their terms of office. Leland Beck, I know you're here. Stand up. It says stand. Steve Howard. And of course, me. It's been my pleasure to work with Leland and Steve, and they've contributed so much to our rich discussions throughout their terms. And really, truly, the thoughtfulness that Steve and Leland both have brought in their various ways to this board for the last 3 years. It's been really great to work with both of you, and I appreciate your leadership so much. Let's give them a round of applause, and please thank them when you see them next. And here is the slate of the Board of Trustees for the fiscal year 2025-2026. Please stand when I read your name. Vice President, President-elect fiscal year 2025-2026, President fiscal year 26-27, Maren Outwater, 2-year term. Treasurer, Armin Kuhlman, 1-year term. Member at Large, Barbara Morton, 3-year term. Brian Kugel, 3-year term. And Member at Large for him as well. Member at Large, Jack Soul, 3-year term. All right. If the board candidates are elected, your Board of Trustees and their terms going into fiscal year 2025-2026 will be Karen Lamphere, President, Maren Outwater, Vice President, Armin Kuhlman, Treasurer, and the trustees at large will be Les Vivian, Jim Davis, Rose Van Oss, Barbara Morton, Brian Kugel, and Jack Soul. Are there any questions about the slate? I can't answer, I don't know if I can answer questions about the ballot. I'm sorry. And I also can't hear you very well. Yeah, it is. Go ahead and take her.
Who had a question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, right there. Yes, thank you. She's right there toward the back. Yeah.
Obviously, nothing can be done about this right now, but I think in the future, it would be better to avoid having our name and contact information on the actual ballot, so that way everybody sees how we voted. I mean, especially if there's a controversial item on this, I think there should be a way to sign up for the ballot in another place, and then after that, vote sort of an anonymous ballot.
I'll have Robbie answer that.
Okay, well, yeah, we'll consider, I'm sure we will think
Robbie has an answer
Robbie
to that
has
question.
an answer. Robbie always has an answer.
I'm up here, everyone. I want you to fold the ballot however you want to fold it to make it private. The ballot committee has always been able to see who votes and how they vote, because we have to certify that you're a voting member of the congregation. If your name is not on the ballot, it will not be counted. So, we're in a new time. It's post-COVID. We're back to voting during the meeting so we can get the results and install the officers. So this is a kind of brand new old time for us. So please complete your ballot fully. Fold it so nobody else can see it, and we will collect it for the ballot committee, and then we will certify you and count the votes. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Robbie.
So by folding it in half, you can keep your ballot private, but it is not secret, and that's always been our practice. Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to say, it seems like pretty confident somebody always knew how you marked your ballot in order to verify that, you have the right to vote. Are there any other questions before we move on to voting for the Board of Trustees? I will take that as a no. I will now call for the vote and marking of the ballots for the approval of the Board of Trustees candidates slate. If you are in person, you will mark the paper ballot you picked up on the way in. And people online should have a link. Oh, see, there's another slide. If you are a voting member watching the live stream, please see the QR code on the screen along with the actual link to the regular voting ballot. We've also put the ballot link in the chat for you. The link takes you to the ballot for the slate and everything else we are voting on. All right, we give everybody a few minutes to mark your ballots. Nice. Sing the song from Jeopardy.
I think we're actually just going to move on with the agenda.
Okay. Yeah. All right, so we will move on. All right, you can vote while I'm talking. So now we're moving on to adopting the new congregational covenant. We will now prepare to vote for our new congregational covenant. Are there any questions on that? Yeah, oh yes, and put the covenant up on the slide, please. Should be on, it's in your agenda as well on the third page, if you count the back of the first page. Can I say a word about that? Absolutely.
Just, the last time the covenant was updated was over 10 years ago, and it seemed like it made sense to update that, just to keep it fresh. And the vast feedback that I got from all of you, well, we would meet to talk about it, and it would get longer and longer. But then when we showed it in the last year's meeting, folks said it's too long. So we've trimmed it back, and I think that this captures what we heard from all of you, but as succinctly and memorably as possible. So this is the new language of the covenant, and I can just, actually, Valerie, would you read it out loud? For some people, that's helpful.
Certainly. I will read it out loud. Well, not from here. We, the members and friends of First UU San Diego, covenant to treat one another with care and respect, listen deeply and non-defensively to seek understanding, speak and act compassionately, trust one another to remain in community even when it is hard to do so. So that's the covenant. Does anybody have any questions, comments, burning concerns? We need a motion. I'm going to call for the vote. I need a motion to approve NEDRA. Oh, no, that's okay. And then Sue second. I heard Craig. That's all right. All right. And now, okay. We did the motion. So, actually, what now is have the approval. We're going to move to marking the ballots.
Right.
I will now call for the vote and marking of the ballots for the approval for our new congregational covenant. Excuse me. Should turn my head a little more there. Next, at this time, I'd like to call on our treasurer, Armin Kuhlman, and our director of operations, Robbie Evans, who will present this fiscal year's financial report and proposed budget in a combined presentation.
Hello, my name's Armin Kuhlman. I serve as treasurer on the Board of Trustees. I'm going to start with the financial review for the year to date as of April 30th, and then we will go on to the proposed budget. And I'd like to ask that we hold questions until the end of the presentation. I'll start with, next slide, please. I want to start with the balance sheet, which shows our assets over on the left side and the liabilities and equities on the right side of your chart. And I encourage you to follow along with the handouts too, to aid in your reading. The asset, we have $9 million of assets, and that sounds like a lot. About half of that is in our fixed assets in the buildings here we have at the church and our property. We also have about a third of our assets in restricted cash and investments, which I will explain later. And then we have some unrestricted cash and investments, and a trust, the Monofold Trust. Our liabilities and equity are $9 million, of course, too. A large part of that is called equity, which is the difference between the assets and the liabilities. And those are primarily the reserve funds. The long-term liabilities actually refer to the mortgage, for the most part, that we have on the Welcome Center, and also some solar notes that are outstanding. Next slide, please. The reserve funds, that's the $7.6 million that we called equity. A large part of that, in the orange, as you see, is the plant, the physical plant, the assets. And then we have some donor-restricted funds, which include our renewal and growth fund, the Monofold Trust, and the J. Richin Music Fund. These are restricted and designated by the donor as a bequest. We also have endowments that you see there in the blue, and that includes our legacy endowment. That's the one we have with UUA. We have a social justice and a Myers Forum, as well as a caregiving endowment. And then we have some for the committees and affiliated. We have the general fund surplus that you see there, and that represents the surplus that we have had from previous operating years at our church. So if we have a surplus in a year, it goes into the general fund surplus. We actually are required to have a general fund balance of $50,000. Next slide, please. Now, looking at the operating budget, we have several columns here showing one is the 10-month year-to-date for our operating funds. And then there's a column for the year-to-date budget. Then there's one for the annual budget for this current year, and then the projection for this year. And so far we're doing well as far as our income in terms of pledges. They're higher than we had budgeted, for which we are grateful. The facilities and rent are actually a little higher. Parking income is down a little bit. And we also have income and transfers included in the budget, which includes our interest income as well. Expenses are actually less than budgeted. The personnel payroll is lower than budget. Property expense a little higher. The program expenses, which includes the ministry teams, are lower. And at this rate, we expect to have a surplus at the end of the year, which ends June 30th. It may not be the whole $58,000, but we're likely to have a surplus. And that's a good too. Next slide, please. This shows in chart form our income trends. On the left side, you'll see the various categories for income, and the main color to look at actually probably is the light blue, which shows our projection for the year, where we expect to be. On the right side, we have the expenses, and they're broken down in the main categories. Next slide, please. Now, we have an income. Here's an overview of the income. And look at the yellow bar on the chart. That's probably Oh, my goodness. They've changed colors on me. Okay. Now, this is actually a color blindness test, too, as well. Okay. So anyway, look at the purple over there, which actually, unfortunately for the income, does show lower pledges this year. We're being conservative in estimating our pledge income. Right now we have about 283 pledge units that people have pledged, but there are about 73, I think, that have not renewed their pledges. And so we encourage you to follow up on that to help support our church community. The parking income slightly lower than what we have in our budget last year, but we have increased our parking rates to $6 an hour, and that should help some. And other income is from reserves, and I'll explain more of that and why it's higher this year. But that's necessary to balance the budget of $1.9 million. Next slide, please. And here again, follow the purple bar for looking at the expenses. We are budgeting higher, or proposing higher staff expenses this year. Part of that is for the South Bay coordinator and pantry coordinator, also program and social justice. And in administration, we have one person going from outside personnel to become one of our staff members too, and that's why the outside personnel is lower. Looking at property, we are going to be expecting lower rental expense because of moving to a new location at the Episcopal Church in Chula Vista for the pantry and the church. Good savings there. But we are incurring higher liability insurance costs with a new carrier with higher rates. The transfers come from reserves the transfers are increased by about $70,000. Next, please. Let's skip over this chart, please. Next, please. Okay. Income overview. Looking at the $1.9 million of income, you'll see that the largest part is our pledges, which actually about $750,000. That's 39% of our income, and for churches of our size and mission, we should really be having probably at least 60% instead of only 39%. We've relied too heavily on our parking lot in the past, and that accounts for just over a third of our income. And that can't continue in this way forever, particularly with the UCSD changes. Now, transfers and interest are going to be necessary to balance our budget. We will be transferring $100,000 or $120,000 from our renewal and growth fund, some money from general fund surplus, and also funds from the pantry and the social justice And those are to fund for payroll for those two, as well as also some of the food and pantry supply expenses. Music also will be a transfer from that for our music program. Other income includes the preschool facilities, dining for dollars. Next slide, please. Okay, expense breakout. About 70% of our budget proposed is for staff and outside personnel expenses. We have about $1.1 million for the staff expenses, people who are on our payroll, and we have about 10 full-time equivalent employees. The other parts of the expense include property, which is about $338,000, and then a program about $252,000, and program is projected for proposed for an increase as well. Next slide, please. Personnel expenses looks a little more closely. You see the large blue, that's our payroll. The outside personnel includes our accounting service, custodial, security, IT support, and sound engineer, and ASL, and those that help in our mission and operations. Benefits and taxes include the medical insurance and retirement and payroll taxes. Next, please. Program and denominational support, that's about $250,000. We have an increase for the ministry teams this year to encourage their work and programs. This also includes pantry food and supplies, which was previously covered in a reserve fund that was not in the operations budget. The denominational support is going to be about the same at $69,000. Communications has some increases for the website, which we will be improving, and communication services. And administration, of course, includes the office supplies and equipment. Next slide, please. Property expense breakdown, that's $338,000 for our facilities. And the biggest one there is the interest on the mortgage. Right now we have a $1.3 million mortgage. That was for the Welcome Center. And we have not been paying interest on that for the last probably 3 years. It's just so, or a principal on it, excuse me. We've only been paying the interest. Even though we did make a payment of $200,000 to reduce our mortgage in late 2022. So we kind of paid ahead on the principal. But this year we are still budgeting just the interest only, even though we would like to be able to in the future start paying down on that principal as well, or finding other resources to cover that and pay down the mortgage. Rental, let's see, yeah, rental expense is expected to be lower this year, and that's because of lower rent at South Bay, as I've mentioned. Maintenance and repair, that is about 21%. And the other category includes landscaping and property tax and internet, and then we, of course, have our utilities. So that concludes the finance presentation for the review and the budget. And I would like to see if we have questions. Sarah?
We need the microphone.
Yeah.
Oh, no, you don't have to get up.
What is our interest rate on our mortgage?
Oh, it's 5.65%. We had, and we've refinanced that about 3 years ago. It was at 6%. The mortgage is 5.65%, and the rate's fixed through about 2027 and or 28, and it's a 10-year term mortgage that it matures in 2032.
Have you considered self-funding that and paying interest to congregants who put money forward to pay it off?
We have not actively considered that, but that is certainly something that we will want to consider. It's a good alternative. Why pay the bank? And we did that successfully with many of our solar notes too. Further questions? John?
You mentioned that most large congregations like ours get a much higher percentage of their income from their membership. And it was very disconcerting to hear that how many pledges are not renewed yet this year. So we've had to go to other funds to balance the budget. Does that mean that we should beef up our fundraising annually?
Yes. We certainly should, and revive the generosity team and encourage, yes, more support, yes. Mm-hmm. Lawrence?
As much as I possibly can.
The way to summarize this budget is to say we're balancing the budget by taking money from reserves, right?
Yes.
And how much, what's the net amount coming from reserves?
$350,000, or was it 325? I don't remember exactly. Yeah. Yes, and that comes from the Renewal and Growth Fund, $120,000 from the Renewal and Growth Fund, about $50,000 from the General Fund surplus, and it also has a total of $72,000 from some other funds, which include the pantry, and that was it comes from the Pantry Reserve Fund, and that was to help fund the payroll for our new positions, a new position there. And then also for supplies, because this is the first time that the pantry is being included in the operating budget. So it's necessary to cover that. And then the rest is from the J. Richin Music Fund, which was intended for helping to pay for our wonderful music program, and we have not been using that every year, too. So that's why we have the reserve funds, and they're very, very helpful.
Thank you.
I have a question online from Genevieve asking, what would more fundraising or tithing efforts look like?
Well, one fundraising thing would be to have a capital drive to raise funds to pay down the mortgage, and also for our deferred maintenance or related expenses. And we do need to have a renewed pledge drive where we have the opportunity for more follow-up. It's disconcerting. There are 73 people who have not renewed, and we do have to realize also that the pledges have been declining over the last several years. Actually. Some of our members are getting older or passing on. Newer members, who particularly those who are younger, generally don't pledge as much. People generally increase their pledges. They become a longer term member too. So we need to look at these trends. A couple of years ago, there were over 300 people who were pledging, and hopefully with a revived generosity team and more focus on fundraising, pledging, we can improve on that. And you know, it says something that our chief pledge drive spirit and leader has been the Reverend Justine, actually. So we need more lay leader participation.
Could I just jump in here for a second?
Yes.
I appreciate all these questions about our finances, and yes, we are going to be rebuilding the generosity team, and I hope that those of you who have these questions will participate in that work, and maybe we really need to have a finance forum early in the new church year. And so I would ask respectfully that folks limit the questions now to what you need in order to vote on the budget for this year, and keep these deeper questions for a longer conversation that we could have in the fall, because we could spend hours just talking about, you know, brainstorming ideas for fundraising, and we have other business to get to. So if we could focus questions on what you need in order to vote on the budget, and then please join me in these conversations in the fall so we can talk about how to make sure that we're supporting the vital mission of this congregation. Thank you.
Thank you, Justine. Any further questions related to the budget? And if you feel you have enough information on it. If there are no further questions, I'll now call for the vote and marking of the ballots for the approval of our fiscal year 25 and 26 generosity and operating, or general operating budget. Time to mark your ballots.
Do you need a motion?
Yes. Do we have a motion on the floor? Okay. From Patrick, and a second? Okay, from Julie. Okay.
No, on the ballot, just call for marking.
Yes, right. Okay. Right. Yes. Okay. And
Can I just?
yes.
Can we have a round of applause for our wonderful treasurer, Armin Coleman, please?
Thank you. So at this time, I'd like to call up Karen Lamphere to talk about the proposed constitutional amendments. Get these papers out of here. Oh. No. Is that good?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, here we are.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. The boards has worked very hard this year on updating and making sure the Constitution is accurate and relevant. And I want to give a shout out to Leland Beck for joining me on the governance team to do that. And also the work of the board in doing this work. Are there any questions before I call for a vote?
Both get our steps in. The quorum change, I'm curious, did we not have a quorum? Well, let me ask that question first and then the other one. So did we not have a quorum in the past?
No, we did not.
And did the board discuss the possible downside to potentially the difficulty in assembling a quorum for votes?
We did. The main consideration, though, was we've had some pretty low turnout at our meetings, and some important decisions have been made by very few people, to be honest. So we contacted about 10 other churches of a similar size and found out what their best practices were as far as a quorum goes. And these percentages are kind of in the middle of what other churches are doing.
So we will just need to lean into scaring people up.
Exactly.
Getting them in. Okay.
Not scaring people, but scaring them. Yes.
Shooing them out of the bushes.
Yes,
whatever.
exactly.
Then the other question, I noticed the language change from member meeting to congregational meeting, and then you have the quorum of eligible voting members. Does that mean, because if you call it a congregational meeting, I assume friends and associates will show up, love to have their voices and have them involved, may help draw them into the community more.
Right.
But then does that mean you're going to need to have a table for everybody coming in and giving some people the agenda but no ballot because they're not members, other people agendas and ballots, so you're going to have to check the rolls as we walk in for those.
Yeah, the ballots are checked. That's why everyone's name is on there. So Robbie and her ballot counting team can ensure that only people eligible to vote are voting.
You're going to do that work after the vote, or are you thinking you would do it as people enter the room?
In terms of establishing quorum, I think is what he's asking.
Oh, I'm sorry. I skipped over the quorum part. That will be done. I would need to ask Robbie how that would be done.
It's only an issue if it seems like the attendance is thin. We would have to count heads. But you didn't see that as a problem this morning. Okay.
Well, and it would be for next year.
So this is really a key issue when you're entering search, right? You want to make sure that a full majority of the eligible members of the congregation are participating. So a year or two before that is when you want to tighten up these kinds of rules. That's what happens during, transitional ministries. You kind of look at where are things a little bit loose. So if I understand your question, you're asking how and when do we establish that quorum exists, right? So it's really only an issue if we look out and say, gee, numbers look kind of thin, and then we would probably stop and actually count. But right now we can make some inferences by how many ballots are taken that, we have enough to establish quorum, so we don't need to count. Is that helpful?
Yes.
Okay.
It's not very tight.
Tighter.
We'll get there. We'll get there. You know, it's the kind of thing that it's going to take a little policy and working around to fiddle it out.
I'd also add, like, we're counting, Bill. So, like, we just counted, there are 113 people in the room, there's 13 online. So, like, we know the numbers as we're starting the meeting.
So I'm new, I'm Lauren, but I'm just wondering, what is a capital drive that we could establish? And is that something that is established, or is that something in the future?
So a congregation would enter, or any nonprofit would enter into a capital drive when you want to do some fundraising outside of your operating budget. So for example, we could say we're going to do a capital campaign to pay off our mortgage and to make some improvements in this space. We could do something like that. So it's specific things that you're going to purchase with the money raised, or things you're going to do with the money raised, and it's outside of a pledge. So, and usually people would have 3 or 5 years to pay off their extra pledge of their capital pledge. Does that help? Okay.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah. So also, somebody fairly new, it looks to me like you're showing the verbiage of new things in the Constitution, but is there nothing in the existing Constitution for these same items, or should we have gone ahead of time and looked to see what the existing Constitution said? I mean, it says there are changes, but it doesn't say what the old one was.
Right. Well, we did not have a quorum. That was one change that was in there. Let me see. I don't have it with me. Do you have the? Yeah, it's in the agenda. Yeah, thank you. Let me just take a quick look. So the quorum is new. There's a change about no absentee voting, and it's clarifying when a supermajority is needed. And the term limits, this is a change from the previous. So I guess I'm saying these are the substantive changes, but they're not, I would say they're additions. They're not necessarily changes to modifying existing language. Does that answer your question?
So the following are added to.
Yes.
And we had forums about this.
Yes, we did. Yeah, we did.
You just have to repeat what he said.
Oh, I'm sorry. He said that we had a couple forums to discuss the changes in the Constitution.
What would be a situation where the lead minister would decide that a waiver is appropriate for absentee balloting?
It's basically the same as when people request a waiver for the pledge. If it's asked for, it's granted. So, I mean, I guess if somebody said, I don't feel like coming, maybe I would say, really? You know, but for the most part, if someone says, I need an absentee ballot, we just wanted to make it an active choice as opposed to just a kind of inertia thing, so that what we really want is for people to participate in person or online in real time so that you can make an informed decision, right? Because it's not just reading information, but it's having a shared experience. So we would like absentee voting to be only when it's actually needed. And so what we find is if people have to ask, then that gives them a little bit more of a sense of commitment to attending. So that's the answer.
So it wouldn't be the situation where the issue at hand is we're going to paint the meeting hall purple, and for this particular vote, the lead minister said, and absentee voting is available to all who. It's more like, I anticipate winning the lottery and moving to Italy, but I want to come back and visit sometime. So I won't be here on the meeting, and I would come and ask you, may I, one individual member, submit an absentee ballot?
Correct.
I love his examples. That was pretty fun.
Why isn't this 4 items instead of lumping all of the changes into one vote?
I don't know the answer to that.
It seemed a good idea at the time.
Why aren't we voting on the individual changes? Why are they lumped together?
Someone can make that motion if they feel like we need to do that.
Okay.
It would add time, but.
It's kind of late for that.
The ballots aren't set up yet.
Oh, the balance is okay.
Yeah. Something to consider in the future.
Anybody else? Any other questions? Going once, going twice, bye.
All right, I will now call for a vote, marking the ballots on the approval of the constitutional amendments. Our newly revised constitution, excuse me. We'll give you a few minutes or a few seconds to do that. At this time, our ushers will come around and collect your ballots. Please make sure they're folded and pass them to the ends of your aisle in either direction.
Was that the last item of business
Before Dave.
announced?
Yeah.
We took all the scripts up here.
Oh, it's okay.
Someone might need.
I think, yeah, how they want, just keep it.
All right, while the ballots are being collected, I'd like to call up Dave Hunt from the Our Sustainable Futures team. Dave?
Good afternoon, all. So, how many people read the letter we posted on the website on May 1st? 5+ page letter giving a sort of a summary of what we've done and what we are going to be doing for our sustainable future. Great. I have nothing major to add to that at this point, but while they're counting the ballots, we thought this was a good time for you to ask any questions that you might have relevant to that topic. So ask away. A number of the committee members are here with me today to answer ones that I might not be able to answer. And I'm looking out there, I believe, yeah, Brent Boykin just raised his hand over here on the side, is our realtor, and he's been working with us for 5 years, and he's very knowledgeable about anything relevant to selling and our property and buying another property, looking around. So, who would like to ask a question?
I see John over here,
And then I see a young woman at the top.
whose name I've already forgotten.
Excuse me, but I've forgotten what I read in May. Could you give us a brief summary of what that 5 pages might have entailed? Thank you.
A brief summary. Well, I was here in January and gave a presentation on why we feel we need to make a decision. And since that time, we have looked at what is our property really worth in terms of who would purchase it. We've looked around a little bit on what we could find. We've started to do a needs assessment, which essentially tells us what do we need in terms of space, facility, whether we stay here or go. We've engaged some outside consultants to help us with this work, not major expense consultants. In fact, one of them will help us try to secure grant funding to fund some of the future work that we might need to do. Those are the things we have been doing. What we want to do in the future is explore options that would help us either raise more money if we sold this property, or would let us stay and find a place to park. So the assumption being that when the hospital finally gets torn down, whenever that is, and our parking lot revenue substantially changes, we might want to sell that parking lot or even some of our campus to raise money. We would not have a parking lot there. Putting underground parking is very expensive. For example, could we put parking over in this open space? So we're going to look at those kinds of things. The other is the amount of money that one developer was willing to offer us for our property was based upon the current zoning, and that zoning translates into how many, the density, how many units they could put per square piece of property. That density was fairly low compared to some of the other properties that our appraiser used, and that's why there was approximately a 2-to-1 difference in what the appraiser said our property was worth and what the developer said they would pay for it. So if we were allowed higher density, they could put more units of housing on this property, then it would be worth more money. That's the short version.
For those of us who didn't see it and want the long version, where do we find it on the website?
That's a good question. On our website, at the home page, about 3/4 from the left to the right, is a section called About. And if you go under About the 7th or 8th item is called Our Sustainable Future. And a lot of the information, but not all, is on that web page. There's additional detailed information that we did not want to make public to the world, which is on the members only website. And when you're on that OSF page that I just mentioned, you can click members only OSF page, and if you are a member with a login, you can go see the rest of it. And that's where we will continue to put information. Who's number 3?
So one thing there's sell here and move. But most of that conversation appears to assume that we're purchasing another property. Given the vacancy rates in business real estate, is there any thought to finding a space to rent that would be appropriate for a congregation? And if that's just not a very good idea, why would it be not so useful to contemplate?
So that's a philosophical question of would we rent if we moved somewhere else? So that assumes we decide to move somewhere else. It also assumes that we can't find something to purchase that we'd want to go to, and we're going to do something in between. All of us who own property in Southern California know that buying is the ideal way to go over time, although from time to time renting is what we need to do. So I could see a situation where we found a property we wanted to buy, but it wasn't ready. And we needed to get out of here because of whatever deal we worked. We couldn't stay and do a rent back. So we could do a rent back here, but yeah, it's possible that we might need to find a temporary house, a temporary place. As I put in the letter, the team doesn't have any, 2 things. We don't have any, this is what's most likely going to happen points of view. We don't, at this point, we couldn't say with any certainty that it's more likely it's going to be this outcome versus that one. And secondly, the committee is completely open, as I think the majority of the congregation demonstrated in the survey that we did. They are also open to the outcome that works best for us. And that was probably, to me, the number one most gratifying thing that happened in the last few months, is that we did that survey and the congregation put their faith in leadership, our leadership, and said, we'll support whatever makes sense. Others? John, you can go again.
I'm going to get all my steps in today.
Has anybody on the committee examined the situation with two other churches in the area, the University Christian Church and St. Paul's Episcopal, who both were challenged with having more property than they had people. And so they were able to develop their land and how they financed that. And they developed their land with housing and with a preschool or with a high-rise building. Has anybody examined those two situations to see if that's not a feasible alternative?
We
for us?
have, we have looked at St. Paul's and what they've done, and in fact, one of our consultants has worked with them. I'm not as familiar with the first one. And there's other congregations in other parts of the West, let's say. Craig Darling, who's on the committee, is familiar with one that's up his way near Vancouver, and we're going to be looking at what they did because it was similar. So yeah, we want to learn from what others have done. But the nuts and bolts of it is, so far, we haven't found a way to sell this property for the amount of money that we think we would need in order to keep the programming and staff close to what it is now. And we haven't found, well, so our next steps along the line of how do we stay and make that financially work are to come up with some solid as in terms of pictures, descriptions, numbers, that we can go to the city and say, we would like to do this. May we? Can we? What would it take for us to put parking down here? What would it take for us to have a higher density for housing, where maybe we could sell part of our property and sell that to a developer who would give us enough money to put the parking down here. Maybe we can rent the parking out. So there's all these things that we, in the next, I would think 6 to 12 months, we want to get those answered. Sooner if we can, but nothing happens fast with the city, as you know. I see a question up there from
Dave, what's the magic
Kathleen
number that we're looking for, that we have to put in the bank in order to keep that 650 coming in?
Oh, a magic number. It was in my January report of the amount of money that we would need to invest to generate $700,000, as you saw in the budget. We get about $700,000 a year from our parking lots. So you do the math, 5% that would generate $700,000. It's a chunk of change. I don't know. Somebody remember the number?
I'm going to make him join the board if he keeps this up, but Bill again.
I'm sorry?
Were you finished with your answer?
Well, I should be able to do that in my head. Like, what's 15 million generate at 5%? 750,000. Stephanie? 20 million? All right, somewhere between 15 and 20 million.
My question is, and I don't remember this exactly coming up in the January presentation, but John mentioned something about churches facing a situation where they have more real estate than they have congregants to use it. Mm-hmm. And there was a question in January about like a needs assessment for, okay, we currently have 600 members, 400 members. I'm inflating the number. 400 members. What goes into figuring out how large would our footprint need to be to serve the needs of 400 members plus the beautiful people that come and visit us as
right.
friends?
So Kathleen, who asked the question before, has led our team in doing the needs assessment. We have a rough draft of some of that. It's not ready to be published, but it should be in the next month or so. So it's a combination of how much space do you need for the staff to have offices, space for worship, space for celebrations and meetings, space for the preschool. Should we decide that's so important, we have to keep it. So a lot of it's space driven, and it's not just necessarily has to be linear space. We can have, what St. Paul's did was constructed a very large building that had a lot of housing, but one of the floors is dedicated to them. Could we build on top of this building here and still worship? That might be pretty tough. This building is now 70-some years old, probably wouldn't work. But could it be taken down and rebuilt in a different way and have more space up here, which means we could sell more space out there? Yeah, those are the kinds of things we need to look at.
I'd just like to suggest that we give a special thanks to this committee, even though I'm on it. It's not very nice to say, but I've been on lots of committees in my career as a clergy person over the years, and I have never worked with a committee that has more diverse skills in one group as this group. And I watch it with kind of awe each time we have a meeting. I sit there and watch, and I'm amazed at all the details that various people have on this committee. Andy and everybody that's on the committee. Now we have Kathleen bringing information from the city, and you know, Stephanie has hers, and Carolyn has special gifts. We all do. And so Dave is an amazing leader who really holds our feet to the fire and also is very thorough. So I just wanted to say that as I observe all the many committees I've been on over 40 years in churches, this is without a doubt the most effective one I've ever seen. And it's really been a blessing to just be there quietly in the background watching each meeting because of the technical ability and the detail I'm seeing. So thank you to my fellow members.
Thank you, Craig. We do meet about every 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks, so we're pretty active, even if it doesn't seem like much is happening. Steve?
I'm coming. I'm coming.
While Steve is standing up, would everybody else who's on the committee, I know the names aren't here, that's here today, would you stand up, Craig? And Sarah, Karen, Stephanie, Armin, Justin. Thank you.
Okay. So I want to be brief and point out something that I think many of you already know. Our pledges are only paying for about 1/3 of the operation of the church. And so we are getting contributions from the community, from the parking lot, to pay for this church. So I just want everyone to remember that when you think how much you get from this church, and the next time we need to do a fund drive or a capital drive, we would like to be self-supporting.
Any other questions? They're still counting back there, so we can sit here and yap all we want.
Here we go. Oh, no question? Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought you raised it. Well, I'm going to take it from a lack of questions that we at least are communicating well with you and you know what's going on. So.
Yes. Oh, Sue Marbury. Hang on a second, Sue. I'm coming. Like I said, we can yap for a while. We got to vamp for a little bit. If you aren't careful, I'm going to make you open the hymn book and we're going to start just sight reading.
This is only because we have the time, because I have what may be a totally off-the-wall question, but you were talking about putting parking in the canyon, and I'm looking at that parking structure, and I'm thinking, could we talk to the hospital about only taking down the top of it and leaving the bottom for us? And we might have to pay for it, but they would be saving money on not having to destroy the whole thing, possibly.
Yeah, so the question is, hey, let's use that one. And I spoke to Jeff Graham, who's the head of UCSD Real Estate, and he said that has to come down because it has $2 or $3 million worth of repairs that would have to be done to make it work, and there's no way you're going to want to buy it. It's not financially feasible. So we did ask that question. I asked him a follow-up question, which is, of all the parking you're going to be building, is any of it close enough that we could walk to? Because presumably they don't use it on Sunday, like they don't use our parking lot much on Sunday. I don't have an answer. He was going to ask his parking person, so that's one of the unanswered, short-term unanswered questions. They're in a bit of a muddle over there because of the same muddle that a lot of us are facing. We don't know what the future is in terms of costs of building, costs of materials, costs of securing financing. So these big high-rise apartments that they were going to put in over there don't have a date of when that's going to happen. But they said that is going to come down in the next 2 to 3 years, I believe, regardless. And there goes our overflow parking, right? But yeah, we looked at that. And so we still are, we remain on very friendly, first name basis friends with UCSD, and we will continue to explore options where maybe there's resources they have that we could utilize, and they continue to be interested in our part or all of our property that they could utilize.
Just listen for the clack and keys.
Yeah, first time questioner.
Somebody with a new question.
Has there been any finding in properties when you've looked around for places to buy since you
Good
talked to us?
question. Brent, would you like to talk about that a little bit? We'll bring you the microphone. So the question is, have we found anything that was feasible for us to move into? We saw a property, a number of the committee members visited it. It's in Linda Vista. It was owned by the Mormons. And we said, it's not going to work. But we did look. We did look.
I want to take a step back and just kind of say I've really enjoyed working with the church for the past 5 years. Robbie's been fantastic, and I think everybody's goals seem to be aligned. It's interesting, as a real estate professional, Dave can attest to this in the board. They kind of said, "Hey, what do you want to do?" And we sell real estate. I'm like, "Don't sell your real estate right now," for a number of reasons. So that was my recommendation. But it would be great if you guys could stay here and make it work, but we all know the challenges. I don't need to go through all those again, but eventually losing the parking revenue when UCSD builds the parking that they're going to build, that sustains the church. But then also, the aging of the buildings and the costs involved in that. So that's what started the whole process, because I think most people know, but maybe some don't know, like, why are we here? How did we get here? And so we have gone out and looked at a lot of options to answer the question. And the issue that you have with the church is, number one, the church wants to stay as close to this location as possible. Everybody who's ever lived in San Diego, go out and find this church sits on 8.8 acres. We probably have about 3 net usable acres. The front is just about an acre. I'm just giving you kind of round numbers. But go out and try to find even 2 or 3 acres in this area. It's very, very difficult. Now go out and find 2 or 3 acres that's zoned for a church, which is a very specific zone. And it becomes very problematic to find something like that. Now, we did find a site down in Mission Valley, and that was kind of from the initial take we had, and obviously everybody has to vote once we find something, was within a reasonable area that could work for the members and be a site that people would want. And the issue was we couldn't move fast enough for that site. We actually engaged. It was owned by the teachers union. They wanted to work with us. They liked the fact that we were a church and a nonprofit. They're a nonprofit and so forth. But the timing just didn't work, because you have the catch-22 of we have to sell this in order to buy that, right? I think, in having worked on this for 5 years, probably the most reasonable approach is some things that we still need to investigate. One is the person that brought up the parking structure in the back. Yes, that has to go down, and yes, Dave did a great job in talking to UCSD, communicates with them all the time, and they absolutely will not, that won't work for all the reasons he mentioned before. But could you build a parking structure that tiers off the back of this if we sold the front piece? And to go back on the front piece, we do have offers that make it sustainable for the church. The number, I don't think my math is wrong on this, but 7% on $10 million, someone mentioned 15, is $700,000. So we have offers over $10 million on that piece, and we haven't even really shopped it, because what we didn't want to do is we've engaged certain the big top name developers that we knew would be players in this, we asked them to give us their numbers that they would propose on this. And we have them from JPI, Ryan Companies, some of the big groups. Graystar is going to be coming in with something so we could kind of see where they were at. So we had some base numbers in order to run some analysis on, what income would look like. But the bottom line is the parking lot can be sold at a number that can make the church sustainable, but then you give up your parking. So where's parking? So the solution is either A, you build a parking structure in the back, which we'd need to find out because you got open space and different zoning things and so forth back there, the feasibility, the cost and so forth, that's a long process, and that process is starting. B, would the developer who developed that give us parking? And the answer is yes, but it's very complex because of what you got to build, the cost to go subterranean, and now we're selling a piece with 135 parking spots, but we're saying we still need 135 parking spots. So what are we really selling them if they got to build that for us? And then what do we net on that? And that analysis hasn't been done, but we are working on that. Dave, I haven't brought you up to speed, but just had a call with Graystar on Thursday and Friday that they're going to be coming up with a proposal for us that says, hey, if we give you 135 spots in perpetuity, in other words, you kind of keep your parking, but then we get rights to build above that, what would that number look like? And then does that sustainable? So we're going to have that number pretty soon. And then UCSD would be the third kind of choice if they could give us some parking. But I guess the only other thing that doesn't address is if we get the 10 million on the front and have the income come in, and it doesn't address what Dave went into on the cost to bring everything up to speed. Because you have a beautiful campus, it's irreplaceable, but we all have to face the facts that things require dollars to keep them up, and some funds need to be spent, and it's a big number on this building. So did I answer the question? Does anybody have any more questions?
Thank you, Brent. We're very blessed to have him working with us. And he's not, if we eventually sell or buy, yes, he will get paid, but he's doing this out of a commitment to working with us. We appreciate it. You're still counting. I need another question.
There's still much whispering going on back there.
Yes, right here. Okay, and right there.
Yeah, and I think I might have sent something to the committee at one point, but long time ago. One of the questions that has come up in this, this site often is how hard it is to find us. People, and there are people who were like, oh yeah, I was out in the parking lot and I couldn't figure out where the church was, and that, which is true. It has been somewhat difficult to find this, and some people had thought, well, if we were in some place like North Park or whatever, we'd be a lot more, Okay, well, we've already talked about the fact that we probably can't find anything like that. But one thing that has occurred to me is the hospital is building, the large hospital is going to be facing Mission Valley. And there are going to probably be off-ramps new ones coming from Mission Valley up to get to that hospital. Oh, here's UCSD Hospital and great big signs, and then the great big hospital that you can see right there. Now, from what I could tell when somebody came and talked to us about this whole deal, was it that isn't it Bachman or one of those streets is going to come up the side of the hospital and it's going to end up right here. I mean, it's, oh, okay. And it just seems to me that you could have big billboards down in Mission Valley saying, Hillcrest Unitarian United Methodist Church, and then all these little arrows, and then all these signs that just brought you straight up here, in which case we would not be this little hidden place in this little enclave in Hillcrest where you had to come from over there to get to us. Mm-hmm. And I'm just thinking of, I grew up Methodist, and that big old Methodist church, the God's lunchbox over in Mission Valley, we had all kinds, that's what we called it. Anyway, That was used for a lot. So the idea was we might not be so hard to find once there's a hospital down there.
Yeah, and that whole topic of marketing, how do we attract people? How do we get people here? I did the tour today, and there were two young men on the tour, both here for the first time. One was a former UU from another location. I said, how did you find us? Google search. So most new people under the age of 40, 50 are going to find us that way, but I've always been dismayed that you could drive right by this place and not know it was here. In fact, I did. My kids were in the preschool, and I didn't even know I was on a church campus. So,
I was here. I took my friend to
Anyway.
her appointment somewhere over here, and we walking back to my truck because I'd parked over here. And as we were walking by, she says, "This does not look like a church."
So I'm wondering now that South Bay has decided to share space with another church, and knowing the shortage of, property that works for churches, is there a possibility that another church might want to come and share this with us and help us cover the expenses to stay here?
it's certainly possible. The challenge would be share what and when, of course. If they want to share this space between the hours of 10 and 11, somebody would have to go to a different time because there's not parking and we're here. So, but if a Jewish congregation wanted to be here and have their thing on Saturday and we had our thing on Sunday, sure, that'd be great. Do you know anybody? Know any churches that are looking? It's as Brent said, it's kind of getting the word out. You want to get it out at the right time. And if you get it out at the wrong time, then people walk away, oh, you weren't serious. You weren't really ready to sell. So we're trying to do things in a logical fashion, and the next logical step for us was to figure out what do we really need so that we can put that together and show it to people. This is what we need. If you want to come in here and work with us, share with us, help us redevelop, this is what we need. So that was our short-term next step, and that's about done.
I'll apologize. This will be a little tangential, but since we have the real estate professional here, how busy is that? Is it legacy or heritage, faith-related convention space down in Mission Valley? Has that been successful as a?
People online want to be able to hear you.
And Brent, you might elaborate on what property we're talking about.
So the founder of that particular organization passed away, and that real estate is up for sale through CBRE. So that's probably a pretty short answer to your deal. But yeah, it's going to change hands. It'll probably be residential development. But it is actively, I don't know if it's an escrow or not, it's been actively for sale for 5 or 6 months. And your question was quite insightful about leasing, and Dave answered the question, but if I could elaborate, the issue you have with a church leasing, because what you're pointing to, and you obviously know a good deal about commercial real estate, is the office market right now is quite slow. Industrial, retail, and so forth, the other sectors are doing okay. There's so many different sectors in commercial. So why can't we find an office building, lease that at a very low rate, and move in? One is zoning, but the other one would be the improvements. Think about an office structure, the way it's designed compared to the way the church is designed. And in talking with the people on the board and so forth, you don't want to go in and just lease an office building and just put some chairs in it. It's really not a home. You guys have a beautiful home here that we, hopefully want to try to either recreate or keep you here. And it would be very difficult and expensive to do. And a landlord doesn't want to fund tenant improvements for a church, where an office improvement, when you go in, they would fund those. And so you'd be putting that money into a leased facility, which I don't think would be the best use of your funds. So I hope that answers your question on that.
Marge has a question. I thought you might get around to having a question.
She'll get around to having a question, right? has to sit and think about it for a while.
Thank you. I'm delighted to hear that there is a needs assessment being developed that will identify what we want here. My question is, are church members being asked that, and are church committees being asked that? I haven't seen something that has asked the congregation in general what they'd like to still see here.
Kathleen, do you want to respond to that?
Just so everyone knows, I'm Kathleen Brand. I'm part of the OSF team. I'm a landscape architect and planner, and I work for the city of San Diego. So I have been working with specific groups. I worked with Reverend Justine and Robbie to come up with a list of different groups within the church that I would interview and talk about what their needs are, what's an absolute must, what's a want, and we've kind of gone over some of that. I have 2 more groups to go through. Choir group, come to me. So I don't have a connection to choir, so we're going to be reaching out to them as well. And then, so we've met, Andy is meeting with the men's group. I have met with staff. I've met with the preschool. I have yet to meet with the young adults and one more of the group. Reverend Justine and Robbie met with maintenance, with Ray. Looking Glass, that's Carolyn, is to work with Looking Glass Theater. I think that's the biggest groups. I can put together put out to our group a draft survey that could be sent out to people as well. So I'm looking for input from our team on that before it goes out. So we are looking at ways to get enough input.
Yeah, I think making it easy for congregants to give their input would be something we want to do.
And just to address, any concerns you might have, I think at this point we're looking kind of high level, like what's the square footage that we need, not color, design, shape, anything like that would have a much wider base of people to ask. But the staff works with all groups, so in terms of square footage, I think we don't need to ask 500 people how many square feet we need, right? We could ask 10 people how many square feet we need. Does that make sense? Just making sure that the groups that use our spaces, that their needs are represented. So that's where we are now.
Keith, and then we may be getting close to
announcing
the votes.
Yes, we have announcing the votes, so I'm going to go.
Oh, Keith,
Yeah,
and
I
then
got one there.
and then John at the top.
Keith, John is first. I'll get to Keith after.
I have one comment for every single group that they don't have to say anything. I'll say it for them. The common room, we need some kind of room, whatever building we get, that has good acoustics and can handle the different kinds of groups that use that size or that type of room. Because the acoustics in there, unless you only have 3 people in there, the acoustics are terrible, especially if you want to split up and have small group discussion.
Thanks, John. All right, Keith gets the last question.
Thank you. Your comment that the parking structure over here would be torn down in 2 or 3 years made me wonder. So I've spoken with the architect for the hospital, and she told us that it'll be 8 to 10 years minimum before the hospital opens up their parking lot and seriously impacts ours. So if they tear this down in 2 or 3 years, then what does that do to our income from our parking lot for the 7 years or so that before the hospital tears down theirs?
Right, so I don't have the metrics of how often that's used. I saw John Kiesler walking away from that today. John, I presume that when you got here today, the parking lot was full, right? And so we offer secondary parking. I don't know how many Sundays or events where that happens. Robbie may or may not. Robbie, do you know how often we have people park over there? Not very many, not very often. So, but when that goes away and it's no longer our secondary spot, we'll have to find a different secondary spot. Maybe it's going to be down the road and people walk, some of them. Right?
What I'm thinking is that during the week, during the other 6 days of the week, that if that's not available, our parking might be worth a lot more than it is now.
Yeah, so supply and demand, of course, means if that UCSD loses that and doesn't replace it, and this is jam-packed full, then we can charge a little more money, and yeah. So the amount of money that we will get from that parking lot over the next 8 to 10 years is uncertain. UCSD could change what they offer at that hospital like they did during the pandemic, and people don't park there. So that's out of our, we stay in touch with them, and I think anything major that was going to happen, we would probably learn about it well enough to start coming up with contingencies. But it's a big question mark.
Make it quick, you're the last one, Steve.
They've already built and finished a huge parking lot that's 1 block from our corner.
Okay, all right. Okay, I think it's time for me to call Valerie back up here so she can let us know the results of the voting. Thank you for your thoughtful questions.
And many thanks to Dave and the rest of our Sustainable Future team. Y'all are doing the real work. So announcements of the voting results. On the Board of Trustees slate. For the Board of Trustees slate, all have been voted in with a percentage of at least 92.93%. The new Congregational Covenant has been voted in with a percentage of at least 97%. The general operating budget for fiscal year 2025-2026 has been approved with a percentage of at least 97%. The constitutional amendments have been all been voted in with a percentage of at least 93%. Thank you all for hanging in there with us, hanging in. And now, we present our new officers and trustees for fiscal year 2025-2026. Will our new officers and trustees please come and join me on the chancel? President, Karen Lamphere. Vice President, Maren Outwater. Treasurer, Armin Kuhlman. Trustee, Barbara Morton. Trustee, Brian Kugel. Trustee, Jack Soul. I present to you your new Board of Trustees. Please recite your acceptance and affirmation of this important and meaningful role in our church. Right there. Right there.
I do solemnly swear to faithfully execute to the best of my ability the functions of a duly elected member of the Board of Trustees of the First Unitarian Universalist Church of San Diego, as stated in the Constitution, and accept the responsibilities of ethical conduct. As a church leader, I affirm that I will uphold the ideals of the Unitarian Universalist Association
in all my dealings and deliberations.
And now the entire congregation and I will follow with this blessing. Blessed are you who, when asked to serve, do it gladly, who realize that change is brought about through human meeting, who do the work of committees and stay till the end. Blessed are you who speak your mind in meetings, who can take and give criticism, who keep alive your sense of humor. Blessed are you who know the work of the church is transformation of society, who have a vision of beloved community, transcending the present, and who do not shrink from controversy, sacrifice, or change. Blessed are you indeed. Thank you. Y'all can go sit back down. Well, that's me done. Truly, it has been my great honor to serve in this role. And I ain't done, I ain't gone. I'll be around, I'll be doing other things. Because, you know, I grew up in a family where we volunteered a lot. And it wasn't, this is what I think I can offer you. But the question was, what can I do for you? And that's where I'm going with this from now on. And before, too, I mean. I'd like to thank everyone for attending today, whether in person or via live stream. We appreciate your participation. All right, there's been a lot going on this year. And now I present your new board president, Karen Lamphere.
Thank you so much, Valerie, for your leadership this year. And I know you'll be back. You'll continue serving our church for many years to come. I'm honored and truly excited about being your board president this year. There's much work to be done. I think we can all agree on that. But I've been part of this church long enough to know that we can do amazing things when we pull together for a common goal. I look forward to working with you all, the board, the ministers, staff, to truly build community as we all bring our time, talent, and treasure to the important tasks that lie ahead. Thank you all for attending today, and without further ado, I adjourn the meeting.